Hey guys, what's up? It's me, People25 here, and today I am bringing you a coaster review doubleheader, a first on my channel. Now, I've been to Cedar Point 5 times in my life. This is regarding it. I went in 2016 in Mean Streak's closing year. I rode it once in its closing year, and I went this year just like last week. I just went last week to Cedar Point and rode Steel Vengeance twice. And, I mean, I will apologize for not uploading because I had to worry about finals the week before, then Cedar Point last week, and then this week I've had a lot of clients and just, like, you know, a lot of clients, a lot of business going on in my home. And I'm going to be flying out to Boston in 2 weeks, so get excited for that. I might film something there, assuming if my second cousin's cool with that. So, disregarding that, I have a coaster review doubleheader. This is essentially comparing somewhat the two coasters at once. I'll be doing 2 reviews at once regarding these 2 rides. I do remember, and I do have notes from Mean Streak, and I distinctly remember Steel Vengeance, because it was Steel Vengeance. You know what goes on with that thing. This will be, we'll see how this goes. Let's do this. Sorry if I'm a little rusty, considering I haven't done a live video in like almost a month now because of all the stuff that's been going on in May and early June and whatever. The drop. Okay, this is where it gets first. The 2 drops were essentially, well, as the whole ride was built into the same structure, but they behave completely differently. I believe when I rode Mean Streak in its last year, the first drop had a trim right towards the top of the structure in order to reduce the roughness and reduce top speed. However, Steel Vengeance's drop is fantastic. It's smooth, fast, long, and 90 degrees straight down. And it's a great improvement around its predecessor. Not the best drop I've ever experienced. Those B&M Hypers and Gigas have better drops in it. But it is a fantastic drop and has some, it gets the ride kicking off quite well. The drop is not even the best part on Steel Vengeance as well, so that's when you know you have a good ride. Mean Streak, the drop was alright. I mean, it wasn't as rough as people made it out to be because of the trims, so the trims kind of worked, but it was also just kind of slashed some of the thrill off the ride. I mean, it was an alright drop, though. I'll give it that. So Mean Streak will be getting a 3 out of 10 for its drop because of the trim, and Steel Vengeance will be getting a 9 out of 10 on its drop. And now, intensity. This is where things get a little nuts here. Mean Streak was a tame and pretty boring ride, since it was just slow, rough, poorly paced, and had just nothing but lightly banked turns. And really the most intense thing about it is going on this ride, knowing the sheer legacy of roughness. Like, knowing that you're going to be riding this thing, and that you're going to be stuck in this thing for over a minute and a half, just enduring a bunch of roughness, a legacy of roughness, not just any sort of roughness, legacy roughness. So, yeah, this thing is not intense at all. If the most intense thing on the ride is knowing that you're going to be riding a bad ride, is just, that's not something to be proud of when it comes to intensity. But Steel Vengeance is sheer madness. The pace is unrelenting. It never seems to end. There's forces, laterals, airtime all over the place. It is an absolutely nuts ride and one of the single most intense experiences I've ever been on. It's up there with like Sky Rush for intensity. Sky Rush and Maverick, it's up there with those 2 rides for intensity. It's on a tier, like just like that. It's fantastic. It's never gonna end. It's non-stop action. It never seems to slow down. I did get a trimless ride on this since it was running only 1 train when I rode it. And they corrected that issue later in the week before that weekend. So I believe it was like Friday, June 1st they corrected that issue. So I did get a trimless ride 1 train. So that's probably why I think it's a little more intense than some. They have started running the trims in order to keep the brake run in better check for 2 trains. But yeah. This is a fantastic intensity. Mean Streak will be getting a 2 out of 10 for intensity, and Steel Vengeance will be getting one of the first ever perfect 10s for intensity. These Steel Vengeance just never stops, and it deserves a 10 out of 10. It deserves like a 15 out of 10 if it goes like that. It's nuts. And duration, both of these rides do duration incredibly well. Mean Streak was about 99, even 105 seconds of ride time in like the colder months. Excluding the lift hill, of course. Mean Streak was an incredibly long ride, which probably was one of the only good things about it, but actually kind of worked against the ride because it was so rough, you just had to endure so long of roughness. Going on a rough ride like maybe Excalibur or High Roller, the thing's going to be over in 40 seconds. You have to deal with nearly 2 minutes of roughness on this thing. It's absurd. But Steel Vengeance, the ride is ceaseless and it never seems to end. It is easily 80 to 85 seconds of ride time based on weather, trims, operational factors. But it's well beyond enough. An RMC is good enough at like 40, 50 seconds. This is an 80-second ride right here for RMC. This is a never-ending experience. It is nuts. You never know when you're going to end, especially in the second half. The second half just never seems to end until you reach the airtime buffet and you know it's all over. The 6 airtime hills right at the end. Both rides will easily get a 10. Their lengths are long enough to satisfy the rider and then some, or in Mean Streak's case, enough to jar the rider to where he's no longer functioning. Maybe that's a little drastic, but whatever. Mean Streak, it's kind of hard to say. I like how long it is. It's a really long ride, but it kind of works against it because it's very rough, and you have to be on a rough ride for that long. Now, the airtime. This was the most contrast between the two rides. Mean Streak only merely attempted airtime a couple times. Had a couple moments where it tried to do airtime. You maybe got a little bit of weightlessness in your gut, but it didn't even counteract gravity. You were still in your seat. You only felt a little bit of weightlessness in like your gut or whatever. So you really don't get a lot. There is some moments where they attempt to do so it's not going to get a 1 for that. Meanwhile, Steel Vengeance, the most airtime of any coaster in the world. And I haven't been on Voyage, but I have been on like rides like Skyrush, Maverick, those two intense ejector airtime examples. And I can say this thing's airtime completely outpaces those two rides. It's absolutely absurd how much airtime is in this thing. You get airtime where you never expect to find airtime. There is even a point in the ride when you're weaving in the structure, there is a 90-degree overbank wave turn with an airtime hill built into it. So you're getting ejector airtime 90 degrees to the left. It's just nuts. I found that in the POV and I was hyped to experience that. I think if I were to pick a strongest moment of airtime on the ride, it'd be just after you come out of the 0G stall and go to the double up towards the mid-course brake run. And the first airtime hill in that double up, you were in your seat until you reach the bottom of the next part of the double up. You are launched out of your seat at that point. I went on and I was impressed. That was probably the single most airtime I've ever experienced on any sort of element ever. It was nuts. Like I said, you get airtime, strong airtime, where you would not expect to get strong airtime. Or just airtime in general. It's just nuts how forceful this thing is when it comes to negative Gs. And so Mean Streak will be getting a 2 out of 10 for merely attempting to do airtime, and Steel Vengeance will get a perfect 10 out of 10 on airtime. It is well deserving of the most airtime of any coaster in the world. Yeah. And smoothness, this is one that, another sharp contrast between the two. Mean Streak was a Dinwoody built in the early 1990s, and oh my goodness, like I said earlier, it was a legacy of being rough. It had a legacy of being rough. The thing was always a walk-on, and that was his claim to fame in the back of the park. Just a lone ride at the back of the park, overshadowed by Maverick, even though it's taller than it. And it's just, my goodness, it's just, it's rough. I did come off of Mean Streak thinking it wasn't as rough as people made it out to be, but it was still quite rough, and being exposed to roughness for like 100 seconds is definitely something I would not recommend experiencing, even though you can no longer experience it unless you're a time traveler. But yeah, and Steel Vengeance, it's utilizing the new RMC trains with 3 sets of wheels in each car, and it's an RMC, so this thing is glossy smooth. Like, people could say it's a little bit rough, but I think the roughness that people are talking about comes from the fact that the ride is bucking you around because of all the airtime. You were being tossed and turned out of your seat, and that's where people might think it's a little rough. The restraints can get a little tight, or can get a little, like, if you marathon this thing, you might get a little sore in your legs because of how much airtime you're experiencing into your restraints. But it's absolutely absurd. We're going to talk about the restraints next, but yeah, this is a huge contrast as well. Mean Streak gets a 3 out of 10 for smoothness. Steel Vengeance, a 10 out of 10. I found nothing rough about this ride. I've ridden B&Ms that were rougher than this, and I think Valravin's rougher than this thing, to be honest. Like, I personally think Valravin's rougher than this thing. And the restraints, This is actually the only category that Mean Streak has over Steel Vengeance. It's kind of nearly pointless considering they use typical things. I just think that Mean Streak uses the standard PTC, L bar, and C bar seatbelt combo, while Steel Vengeance uses your typical RMC U bar with the shin guards. It's kind of a bulkier restraint and it's like kind of heavy and it's pretty hard to budge. But for how much airtime you're getting, it's completely understandable how those restraints. It could be so over the shoulder restraints if it was like built by Disney, but no. This thing has outright lap bars. It is absolutely absurd. And unlike typical RMCs where the seatbelt is set length, there's like, you know how you have your car seatbelt and you can pull it over your shoulder to any length within like a certain wheel length? Yeah, they have those. You just pull it from nowhere. You pull it from the corner, you get belt of the desirable length, buckle it in. You don't have to worry about bigger riders being kicked off because their seatbelt doesn't fit them. So I saw very few walks of shame on this thing, and a couple times I rode this, I saw very few walks of shame off of this ride compared to Goliath, which is my home RMC. I've seen plenty of walks of shames off of that, mostly due to the seatbelt. So massive improvement there, just not like for the ride comfortability, but for accessibility. Mean Streak will be getting 8 out of 10 because PTCs are a little more open, free than RMC trains, which will be getting a 7 out of 10. You'll see this across all the types of categories like this. Maybe a little bit of difference. Neither of these trains hinder or benefit from the type of thing. Mean Streak was not a CCI, so it didn't ever transition to Gerstlauer trains, which are absolutely awful. Try riding Boss to see why. This thing has the new generation trains, but it doesn't impact the ride comfortability. It just impacts the smoothness. We're talking about like how comfortable is it to ride in this train here. So that's why it's not getting any higher score despite the technology innovations. And finally, we have, the two comparable categories, the theming. Mean Streak does not have a single identifiable theme. It was given a ride, a couple trains, maybe a sign, and just a bunch of cattle pens, like nothing. This thing didn't have any sort of identifiable theme. It's just a typical like 90s name, no theming. It was kind of there. And the best theming it has there is its Tombstone. That's probably the best theming it has right now. It's Tombstone. And Steel Vengeance doesn't have that much theming. It has a story. The whole Frontier Town is getting a facelift with Steel Vengeance adding a story. You get occasional pop-up characters with the 3 outlaws, Digger, Chess, and Blackjack. And you also get like a couple buildings. The whole queue is like wooden or hybrid themed. It just looks a little western. It brought fresh blood to the area, Frontier Town, complemented the whole thing. Mean Streak was kind of just out of place, and like a ride with no theming in a heavily themed western town. It just didn't make sense. And now the Steel Vengeance is improving upon the western theming. It's a massive improvement to the whole facade there. And Steel Vengeance will be getting a 3 out of 10, while Mean Streak will get a 1 out of 10 for theming. I did not see the pop-up characters when I was there on Tuesday, or when I went. I went Tuesday, May 29th to the park. Spent almost all day there. Just left a little early to avoid traffic. I did not see the pop-up characters, and it wasn't even that hot out, so whatever it is. It's live characters as well. I've seen videos of it in like private events or like occasional compilations of the area. I don't know. And the last category is inversions. Mean Streak simply does not have any inversions whatsoever, unless something goes horribly wrong. But Steel Vengeance, having 4 inversions, I'm going to be talking about them. The first inversion is probably the best of the ones, because it's a 0G roll that keeps going for at least another quarter rotation, right into a wave turn. Like, it's such a weird feeling. You just keep going. You just keep rolling into a wave turn. It's absurd. That is a fantastic inversion. I kind of don't like the 0G stall. It's a little sudden. I'm not a huge fan of 0G stalls, unless they're like Goliaths. But I think that Steel Vengeance is a good element. It's welcome to the ride, and I think other people like it more than me. And the last 2 barrel rolls are very fun. I love barrel rolls from RMC. They do them incredibly well. and I just think that there's nothing wrong with them, especially if you're just getting a combination. You don't know what force to expect next. Are you going to get a barrel roll? Are you going to get an airtime hill? Are you going to get an overbank turn? And the fact that you're still like wandering from all those other forces, you sometimes get thrashed about by the barrel roll. Like you sometimes go with the force instead of trying to resist it and keeping your posture good. And that's what I love about it. It's just relentless, and the barrel rolls just help amplify that experience. So, mean streak, the score does not exist for inversions. Since it doesn't have inversions, nor does it have a launch, it will not be graded on an 80-point scale. It will be graded on a 70-point scale. And Steel Vengeance will get a 7 out of 10 for the 8th category inversions, and will be graded on an 80-point scale. So, the final thoughts. Mean Streak's total score is 29 out of 70, averaging a 4 1/7 out of 10. I give it a 3, though. Mean Streak is just And Steel Vengeance is getting a 66 out of 80 with an 8.25 average score. Probably one of the best, I think the best at my channel so far, but it deserves a 10 out of 10. If I can go any higher, I would. Steel Vengeance is a massive improvement over its predecessor, and it's easily the best ride at Cedar Point, if not in America, or, you know what, the entire world. It might be the entire world. You can trek half the globe for this. You can I recommend coming all the way from Australia, come all the way from Asia, come all the way from Europe, South America. Any coaster enthusiast all over the world must make their pilgrimage out to Cedar Point. They need to ride this and their juggernauts of their other rides like Millennium Force, Maverick, and Top Thrill Dragster, as well as some legacy supporting casts like Raptor and Magnum. It's just, this ride is going to be a titan of the coaster industry, and more people, I think this is going to be a huge sales boom for RMC, because this is going to be the pinnacle ride that they're going to be looking at. I mean, they will have to look past some of the maintenance issues, like the opening day jitters, but I'm sure RMC will also learn from their mistakes. They also, I don't know. I mean, neither of the rides had problems except Steel Vengeance, but now they might calculate a little more physics or improve their technology based on what happened with Steel Vengeance and the brake run. But for now, like I said, it's still sorting out bugs. They just started two train operations like late last week, this past weekend, and 3 trains is probably on the horizon come the peak of summer, like July. 2 train is good enough though. If they can get 2 trains running consistently in it, the capacity is going to essentially be like tripled or even quadrupled over 1 train operations. It's absurd, but oh my goodness, Mean Streak is just crap. It's not a good ride at all, or was not a good ride at all. I got 1 ride on it, grabbed the credit, got my first and last ever ride on it, knowing that I knew the markings were already on the support beams come that time, since I went in late June of 2016. I knew it was going to be my last ride. I got a photo with it, just for memory's sake, because I rode that piece of crap and saw it die. And then I came 2 years later to a Steel Vengeance in just after Memorial Day. It was quite crowded. It's 2-hour lines both times, but it was worth every single second of that wait. I got a ride on the 3rd row and the 5th row, like I said earlier. It is fantastic. There are no bad seats in this thing. I like riding in the front, but I was without trims. The airtime's a little stronger for me in the front, or like a little more consistent. Riding in the back in an RMC does give you a little bit of a gamble when it comes to roughness, or it's a little more aggressive. It's definitely more aggressive in the back. But yeah, that is my thoughts on Mean Streak and Steel Vengeance. I was postponing this. I would have done Mean Streak so much sooner in my reviews thing had it not been for Steel Vengeance being inevitably on the horizon. I knew Mean Streak was going to die at the end of 2016. And I knew it was going to be RMC'd based in late 2016, early 2017 after they saw the cranes there. And I was waiting for so long to make a video about these two, comparing them directly through a coaster review doubleheader. And on that note, I'll leave it off here. If you guys have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscription. I hope you guys have a great insert unit of time here, and happy trails if you're going to end up going to Cedar Point for this marvel. As always,